So, welcome everybody to August Psychic Circle. So, today we are talking about healing the wounded inner child. So, the reason why I picked this topic for August is because the past couple of weeks, actually starting from July, there has been a lot of very strong energies. And these strong energies have actually brought up a lot of deep trauma and emotion, as well as deep karma in a lot of people around me, and it is very clear that some of this trauma is actually related to experiences that we have actually been through and have not yet healed from in our childhood. Okay, now so first of all, I want to talk a little bit about what the inner child like is, because a lot of people ask me about the inner child, and some people are actually unclear about what the inner child is. So there are several explanations and interpretations, but I think generally an inner child is the child you that is inside your subconscious. Okay, most often the inner child would carry the experiences and the memories that we have from birth to the age of 10. Okay, if you subscribe to Carl Jung's theory of an inner child, he's basically relegated inner child as an archetype that represents innocence, creativity, and hope, like for the future. Okay. Now, why is an inner child important? Because if your inner child is healthy, which means that the child you inside your subconscious that carries your experiences when you were from your childhood, it can be a source of strength and confidence that can actually help you create an impact on the world when you're an adult. Okay? Because a healthy inner child is a space that we can draw a lot of strength from. However, if there is wounds and trauma, especially emotional trauma, that the child you has sustained, this actually remains in the inner child if you have not addressed them and if you have not like healed them. Okay. Now, I think for me personally, I like things to be pretty like structured. So instead of going like spiritual and mystical about like the inner child, I tend to link the inner child to the psychological concept which is developed by Erik Erikson. So I find that his sort of theory and how he has split up the psychosocial like stages subscribe or rather adhere very closely to what I've actually observed in my work with my clients. Okay, so here are the stages in development in summary. This is a very famous theory. So if you Google Erik Erikson, you would easily see this like psychosocial like stages of development, and you can read up about it in more detail. Okay, now basically from infancy, which is birth to about 18 months, uh, the emotion that we are working with and the values that we're working with is trust versus mistrust. And I think this is very apparent because like when human beings, when we are born, we're completely helpless, right? So we literally can do nothing for ourselves. So we are at the mercy of whoever's like taking care like of us. So therefore, this is the time where we develop the values of, do we trust somebody or not? Okay. And important sort of like events that correspond to this psychosocial stage is of course feeding, because when you are a baby, you are not concerned about like saving the world or doing anything like spectacular. All you want is to eat and like tend to your like bodily functions. Okay, and of course sleep, right? So if we actually have a good outcome, which is that you're a baby and you're fed regularly, and you feel like there's a lot of love and support, then the outcome is that it's easy for you to be hopeful, because in a way you're hoping always for that the next meal is going to come and then you're going to be fat. Okay. Now from 2 to 3 years old, and that's when we learn about our own independence of opinion and versus like emotions such as like shame and doubt. Okay. So important events during this period of time is things like toilet training, like how do you tend to your own bodily like functions. Okay? And of course, the outcome of this is you develop like a will, whether it's strong or it's weak. You develop a sense that okay, this is I needed to get something done, and then I'm gonna go and like do it, right? From preschool, we learn about initiative versus guilt, and this is the time where we are most curious and we're exploring. So this is why I think a lot of parents like feel like the children between the age of 3 to 5 are at their naughty years, and it is actually good to encourage that exploration, because when you're 3 to 5 years old and you're given free range to explore, you start to develop like a sense of purpose. I think I was very lucky because when I was 3 to 5 years old, I was living with my grandmother in a shop house, and I was given a lot of freedom, and I basically could like run around and do whatever I want. And so long as I didn't break anything and I didn't do anything that, annoyed any of the adults, I was basically left alone to sort of explore. And I had some toys and basic things like, color pencils, crayons, and paper in which like I could like create and draw if I wanted to. So that I felt in adult life helped me to very early on develop a strong sense of what it is that I want to do, and the purpose like of my life, to feel purposeful. Now, our school age, which is from 6 to 11 years old, that's when we actually learn about having like complexes, meaning like how do we actually measure up against the rest of the people around us and in the world. So here, of course, the important events during the time is school. So if you went to school and you had like a good like experience, and you won't like bullied or anything, you develop a lot of confidence. Conversely, if from the age of 6 to 11 you suffered at the hands of bully, or you were constantly failing exams in school, and that or teachers telling you that you're not as intelligent or you're stupid or something like that, then the outcome is that you end up actually having a sense of low self-esteem. Again, of course, here we're talking about school, but throughout infancy all the way to the school age, your family and how your parents actually treat you would also figure in this. Okay, so for example, in early childhood, if you're not that quick to pick up like and perfect like toilet training, if you were then shamed by your parents because of that, you end up actually being rather weak-willed, because you feel like you're not like really capable of doing like even something that simple. So whatever happened to us from the age of from birth up to 11 years old actually figures like a lot in building up hope, will, purpose, and confidence, of which is extremely important in our adult life if we are going to live a purposeful and meaningful and fulfilling lives for ourselves. Okay. Now, I'm just going to quickly, because we're talking about inner child, so I'm just going to quickly go through adolescence. That's when we learn identity versus like our role in the role in society. In young adulthood, that's when we learn the difference between intimacy and isolation, and that's when we start to learn what love is. In middle adulthood, that's when we learn about care, being productive versus stagnating. And in maturity, which is 65 to like death, that's when we learn like ego integrity versus like despair. And the outcome, of course, is wisdom. So that's why generally people tend to feel that people who are 65 years old and above tend to have some kind of a wisdom in life, especially if they have reflected on it. Of course, nowadays it's not that accurate because most people, a lot of people 65 years and after tend to feel like with a prolonged sort of lifespan, they can enjoy life like even more. So not many may spend time reflecting on life. So this part now is a little bit different from previously. Okay. Now, so now that you've understood like how the identity and the inner child sort of developed, I think the next important thing that we want to talk about is how do you know if you have a wounded inner child? Like, so here we're talking about healing the wounded inner child. So, but there's no need to assume that for sure you have a wounded inner child. So how do you tell if you have one or not? Okay, so some common signs, and of course this is not an exhaustive list. There are more, and sometimes you might need like a therapist or a healer to help you to also like arrive at like a diagnosis of whether you have a wounded inner child and how badly wounded. Okay, but generally, these are signs of a wounded inner child. So first is self-sabotaging behaviors. Okay, why? Because a lot of people who have wounded inner childs, um, they would suffer from an inner conflict, and then there is this like conflict between what do I deserve and feeling like I deserve like a lot. Okay, so so when you shoot for something or you try to manifest something, but deep down your inner child feels that you don't deserve it, you end up actually sabotaging like yourself. Okay, another common sign I observe is abrupt and overreaction to actually negative comments and events, even really small ones. Okay, so we're not talking about like standing up to bullying or harsh criticism that is unnecessary, etc. We're talking about very simple things that sometimes even little jokes that your friends make or your partner makes. And then there is an overreaction, and that overreaction is really abrupt and it can be even explosive. So in this case, there is reason to suspect that there could be a wounded inner child. Okay. Another sign, which I'm pretty familiar with because a lot of people that I work with have this problem, which is that they hide and they mask their emotions. Sometimes, when the inner child is wounded, but it's not that like bad, and there's trauma that exists, but it's not serious in the form of like strong like physical or mental like abuse. Uh, some people may not hide or mask emotions, but they may mute their emotions. Okay? So if you have difficulty feeling really happy, uh, or allowing yourself to feel like positive emotions to like a large like extent, and it seems easier for you to experience negative emotions or to experience no emotion, and you're telling yourself that yeah, it's because I've made peace with everything and I've detached myself from emotions, etc., then you might actually have a wounded inner child that you want to connect with and heal. Okay, most people who have a traumatized like inner child have relationship issues with family, and also they have problems with their love relationships. This is because if your self-esteem is low, and if you don't find that you don't have like a purpose, or you're not living for yourself and your own identity is not strong, it's very easy to get like swept away by what it is that other people need of you. Okay, and at the same time, if you're in a love relationship it's easy to feel insecure about the other person, to also feel consistently suspicious, and to always doubt like the love that you're getting. So because of that, there would definitely be conflict with family, and often conflict with your partner. Now, people who have a wounded inner child sometimes feel like they cannot be their authentic self because their authentic self is not good enough. So, and but yet there may be like a really grabby energy, like they feel like, I can't have this, I don't deserve this, but I really want this. And then they start to feel like they need to grab it for themselves. So when that actually happens, and this doesn't happen for everybody, but for some people, they start to manipulate people and situations so that they can be sure that they can get what they want. Okay. However, usually this at some point in time backfires on them, and then relationships break, and they're worse off rather than better off. Okay. Another sign be unhealthy addictions and coping mechanisms. So this we're talking about like overeating or over drinking of alcohol. Some people even turn to like drugs, um, and coping mechanisms may not necessarily have to do with something that is like physical. Nowadays, like there are some people who they overindulge in terms of they watch like Chinese, Korean, or Japanese drama serials, and before you know it, like 5 hours is gone. Or they start playing a video game, or and the next thing you know, it's like they've just played throughout the night. So all these are unhealthy addictions and coping mechanisms, and they exist to distract you from looking at what it is that you really should be doing. Okay. And then of course, and a big sign of a wounded inner child is very harsh self-criticism and low self-esteem. Okay. Now let's go to the next slide. Okay. So John Bradshaw had said that he believes that the neglected, wounded inner child of the past is the major source of human misery. And I think this is really true because if you think about it, what we experience in our childhood forms the foundation of our adulthood, right? And what we experience like as a child stays with us in our subconscious, because some of the things, even if we cannot consciously remember, or we have like selective like amnesia, but the reality is that some of these memories are already etched in our subconscious, and even if we cannot remember the exact incident, I'm pretty sure that we remember the pain and the emotion. Okay. So that's why it is important to work with like your inner child so that you can be balanced and well adjusted in the present time now as your adult self. Okay. So now, most importantly, how do we heal like an inner child? Okay. So I think the first thing is that don't expect like a miracle healing. So in order to heal, you do need to allow for enough time, and you don't rush it, because it's just like dealing with a child. Imagine like the child children are not like adult where we are super efficient and we can adhere to like a time schedule and a timeline. Most of the time children tend to need a little bit of freedom, and it is what it is, and they cannot be rushed. So have enough respect and compassion for yourself so that you do not rush the healing of your wounded inner child. So do allow for enough time. And then secondly, one of the things that you can do is, first of all, get to know your inner child. Okay? So if you've never even realize your inner child exists, then this is a time for you to connect with your inner child through the meditation visualization. On my YouTube channel, there is actually a meditation that helps you to connect with your inner child. So if you are interested to do this, you can use that meditation, or you can simply just sit quietly and set the intention to connect with your inner child, and then just bring up the image of yourself when you're a child and see that child you in front of you, and then slowly kind of give it life in animation, and then try to have like try to feel that connection like with that child. Okay, so connecting with your inner child so that you're acknowledging your inner child and all the emotions that your inner child have is very important in healing the wounded inner child. Okay. Once you've established the connection with your inner child, you can do a few things. So one, you can just have a conversation, you know, you can actually sort of like listen and dialogue like with your inner child. So you can speak like with your inner child, and but most importantly is listen. And when you listen, be patient. As I said, allow for enough time, because sometimes if your inner child has been severely wounded or traumatized, he or she would take some time to respond to you. So you don't want to rush it. Okay. If you find that it's difficult for you to hold a visualization and to kind of like listen and dialogue with your inner child, one of the other methods you can try is to write your inner child a letter. Okay. So I find what really works is to think about what is the nickname that you used to have when you were a kid, okay, and then um, write a letter to that child you using that nickname, and then you can sign off the letter with your own like adult name. Okay, that usually serves as a differentiation between the child you and you, but at the same time, it is possible for you to, using the method of letter writing, connect also like with your inner child. Okay. As for what it is that you want to write to your inner child, I would say try to write like words that empathize with the child you. Try to write compassionate and kind words, and of course, try to be nurturing and comforting, because the whole point of doing the inner child like work is to basically reparent like yourself. Okay. Now, another thing that you can try in healing like your inner child is to connect and to heal your inner child is to take yourself back to childhood moments where key emotions happen. Okay, so notice that I say key emotions and I did not put the word positive nor negative like uh, uh as an adjective ahead of it. So why is because you don't just want to go back to negative or painful moments, because it could be overwhelming like for you, especially if you're doing on your own and there is no supervision. Okay? But what you want to do is to go through a series of emotions. So for example, start with neutral emotions like surprise, okay, like uh like and okay, and like maybe like a sense of accomplishment or pride. Okay, and then move on to like happiness, okay, joy, you know, um and when you feel like comforted. Okay, and then you can slowly move to like sadness, and then emotions that are a little bit stronger, negative emotions that are a little bit stronger like disgust, and then like pain. Okay, however, for the negative emotions, I'll suggest that you might want to consider doing it in the presence of a healer or facilitator or therapist, so that in the event something really painful that comes up, there is somebody on hand to help you to deal with it. Okay. Now, if you're simply happy making the connection with your inner child and listening and dialoguing with your inner child, then what you can also proceed to do is to nurture your inner child. So nurture your inner child is about like hugging your inner child, kissing your child, you saying kind words, comforting, cuddling with like the child you. So this is about sort of helping the child you, your inner child, to feel comforted and safe and like secure. So you want to be speaking words of comfort, of like compassion, of assurance, Yeah. So this actually are good first steps like to heal like a wounded inner child. However, if you find that the trauma is great and you're coming up with certain memories which can be overwhelming and a little bit too much for you to handle, then I do advise you to work with a therapist or a healer for your inner child work. Okay. Of course, in the everyday like life, it is also possible for you to allow yourself to let your inner child out, and you can do this through the process of play and like creation. Okay. Now, so in summary, I feel that healing your inner child is the foundation to your success as an adult. Okay? Most of the time, when we feel like that the past is the past and we don't want to dig it up and we can just sort of like leave it like as it is, it does come back to haunt you. So, and sometimes what happens is that it comes back at a point in time where you're one step away from a really big success, and that's when this wounded inner child will surface and trip you up, and then you're going to regret not dealing with it sooner. Okay? Because we only have one life to live. So I do advise that this be something that you look into and take fairly seriously when you're ready, of course, so that you can actually live a successful, meaningful, and fulfilling life for yourself. Okay. Thank you very much for listening like thus far.